German Wings Mars Control Center. What cruise level were you authorized for? This is the Mars Control Center. Please respond. The Mars Control Center attempted to establish communication with the crew, but received no reply. In a tragic incident that reverberated globally, a German Wings A320 was hijacked and directed towards the French Alps by its co-pilot while the captain was momentarily away from the cockpit. Open the door, let me in," the captain urged as he tried to reach the co-pilot via the intercom, but again there was no response. He continued to knock on the door, signaling to everyone that something was amiss, which instilled fear throughout the cabin. This narrative recounts an unimaginable tragedy, the story of German Wings Flight 9525 on Tuesday, March 24, 2015. An Airbus operated by German Wings was en route from Düsseldorf to Barcelona. During the captain's absence, the co-pilot made significant alterations to the set altitude, adjusting it to 100 feet for 3 seconds, then escalating to a maximum of 49,000 feet, before finally stabilizing at 35,000 feet. It appeared that the co-pilot was experimenting, a behavior he would replicate on the return flight, ultimately with catastrophic results. Despite these altitude adjustments, the engaged autopilot modes ensured that these changes did not affect the aircraft's descent trajectory. After the captain returned to the cockpit, the flight continued on its intended path, ultimately achieving a smooth landing at Barcelona Airport. The aircraft then proceeded on its journey. Shortly after 144 new passengers boarded the aircraft, the crew, consisting of 6 members, remained unchanged. The captain for this flight was 34-year-old Patrick Sondheimer, a German national with nearly 7,000 flying hours, of which over 3,800 were logged on the Airbus A320, including 259 hours as captain. He was designated as the pilot monitoring for this flight. The co-pilot, 27-year-old Andreas Lubitz, also from Germany, had accumulated more than 900 flying hours, with 540 of those on the A320. From a young age, Andreas aspired to be a pilot. He joined a local gliding club at 14 and earned his gliding license 2 years later. However, this achievement did not fully satisfy his passion for aviation. On September 1, 2008, he commenced his basic training at the Lufthansa Flight Training Pilot School in Bremen. Unbeknownst to many, Andreas faced significant personal challenges, including severe depression and insomnia, and at one point he contemplated suicide. In his pursuit of help, he sought the assistance of a psychiatrist and engaged in therapy and relaxation techniques. He was prescribed an antidepressant, which necessitated a pause in his pilot training due to the non-revalidation of his medical certificate by the Lufthansa Medical Center, a decision influenced by his condition and ongoing treatment. A few months later, Andreas's mental health showed notable improvement as confirmed by his psychiatrist. However, a setback occurred on July 14. In 2009, when his request to renew his medical certificate was denied, Lufthansa informed the LB just 2 weeks later. Subsequently, Andreas was issued a new Class 1 medical certificate, enabling him to return to pilot school. This certificate was valid for 1 year, but included a crucial stipulation. It would be revoked if he experienced a relapse into depression. After successfully completing his ATPL written exam, he continued his training at the Airline Training Center in Phoenix, Arizona, from late 2010 to early 2011. His aspirations extended beyond flying, as he also worked as a flight attendant for Lufthansa for over 2 years, while simultaneously pursuing his pilot training. His dedication and skill culminated in obtaining his A320 type rating in Munich by late 2013, and he subsequently joined German Wings. By June 2014, he had passed his proficiency check and became a co-pilot. Throughout his training and evaluations, Andreas consistently impressed his instructors and examiners, who regarded his professional performance as exemplary. However, in late 2014, Andreas's mental health deteriorated, leading to vision and sleep issues that prompted him to seek consultations with several private physicians. By early 2015, he had received sick leave certificates and medication for a psychosomatic and anxiety disorder, and he was referred for psychiatric treatment due to suspected psychosis. Additional medications, including sleeping aids, were prescribed shortly thereafter. Due to patient confidentiality, Germanwings remained unaware of Andreas's struggles, and he continued to fly without anyone knowing about his condition. At 9:00 local time, Germanwings flight, a predetermined period of just 30 seconds after the captain's departure, the co-pilot altered the altitude from 38,000 feet to 100 feet, a maneuver he had previously executed on the flight to Barcelona. However, this time, it resulted in catastrophic outcomes. Subsequently, the autopilot was engaged in open descent mode, and the autothrust was set to idle, prompting an immediate descent of the aircraft. 2 minutes later, the co-pilot transitioned the speed management from managed to selected mode, enabling him to manually adjust the target speed to 330 knots. Consequently, the aircraft's speed increased, with the descent rate varying between 1,700 feet per minute and 5,000 feet per minute. At that moment, none of the individuals on board were aware that the aircraft had commenced its descent. Meanwhile, the Marseille Control Center noted that the aircraft's altitude had fallen nearly 2,000 feet below its assigned cruising level and continued to decline. In response, Marseille attempted to establish communication with the aircraft to verify its altitude clearance, asking Germanwings Marseille Control Center, "What cruise level were you cleared for?" However, there was no response from the co-pilot. The Marseille Control Center made several attempts to contact the crew on an alternate frequency, reiterating Germanwings Marseille Control Center, "Please confirm what cruise level you are cleared for," but the co-pilot remained unresponsive. The controller made 3 additional attempts within 30 seconds to reach the flight crew, yet the co-pilot did not reply. Meanwhile, the selected speed continued to be monitored. The aircraft's speed was adjusted to 323 knots, resulting in a rapid increase in velocity within minutes. Shortly thereafter, the aircraft descended approximately 10,000 feet, following the speed modification. A buzzer sounded outside the cockpit, indicating the captain's attempt to re-enter, yet the co-pilot showed no response. The Marseille Control Center made continuous efforts to establish communication with the crew, but received no reply. Although the co-pilot remained silent, the controller could hear his calm breathing. Andreas maintained full control and increased the speed to 350 knots, reaching the aircraft's maximum operating speed. The captain attempted to contact the first officer via intercom on 4 separate occasions, but the co-pilot remained unresponsive. Recognizing that the co-pilot would not open the door, the captain confronted the grim reality of the situation, repeatedly urging, "Open the door, let me in." Following the events of 2001, cockpit security measures were heightened to prevent hijackings. The cockpit door, now bulletproof, separates the cockpit from the cabin and requires a standard code for entry, along with an emergency code for situations involving crew incapacitation. However, pilots can override this by setting the door control to lock, thereby preventing access from anyone outside the cockpit. It was this very mechanism that the co-pilot exploited to permanently secure the cockpit door. As the aircraft began its descent with the door locked, the captain was unable to re-enter. He peered through the windows and observed the rapid descent of the aircraft, ultimately resorting to using an emergency axe in a desperate attempt to gain access to the cockpit. Despite his efforts, the cockpit door remained inaccessible. Panic engulfed the passengers as they witnessed the captain urgently shouting for the door to be opened. His desperate pleas signaled to everyone that something was gravely amiss, instilling a profound sense of fear throughout the cabin. "Open the goddamn door. Let me in." The Marseille Control Center, in conjunction with an air traffic controller from the French air defense system, endeavored to establish communication with the flight crew, but received no reply. Additionally, the crew of another aircraft attempted to make contact, yet their efforts were equally futile. "German wings, Mars Control Center, please respond," was the call that went unanswered. In response to the escalating crisis, a French military jet was dispatched from the Orange Catat Air Base in a swift attempt to intercept the aircraft. However, the situation had already deteriorated to a critical level, with the aircraft descending below 7,000 feet and the mountains drawing nearer, triggering the ground proximity warning system. "Terrain ahead. Pull up. Open the door," echoed the warnings. Moments later, German wings, Flight 9525 tragically crashed into the French Alps, resulting in the loss of 150 lives from 21 different nations. Among the deceased were 16 exchange students, part of a class of 40, with only 16 spots available for this journey. The local fire department, Civil Protection Rescue Service, and police were promptly dispatched, but the crash site proved nearly inaccessible due to the challenging terrain, necessitating a walk of over 3 hours for most personnel, who had to be flown in by helicopter. The severity of the situation became immediately evident. A few days after the crash, a vigil was held in the Swiss Alps, where families released balloons into the sky, each representing a victim. Before proceeding with the investigation, let us take a moment of silence in their honor. On March 26, 2 days after the tragic incident involving Flight 9525, Lufthansa CEO Carsten Spohr addressed a gathering of media and grieving families. He announced that the black box had been recovered and analyzed, providing crucial insights into the events leading up to the crash. During the press conference, Carsten Spohr expressed profound sorrow and disbelief, revealing that the co-pilot had intentionally caused the aircraft to crash. He remarked that such a tragedy was unimaginable for the company. An investigation into Andreas Lubitz's residence revealed a concealed notification regarding his illness on the day of the accident. It was discovered that the pilot was suffering from a psychiatric disorder, potentially a psychotic depressive episode, and was under treatment with psychotropic medication, rendering him unfit to operate the aircraft. Neither the airline nor his colleagues were aware of his condition. Furthermore, investigators uncovered diary entries and an online search history that included inquiries about painless poisons, methods to induce blindness, overdosing on antidepressants, death by petrol, and information regarding the locking mechanism of the Airbus A320 cockpit door. In the aftermath of this tragedy, Lufthansa took swift action to offer compensation to the victims' families and continued to provide support in the ensuing months. In light of the incident, significant safety recommendations were put forth by aviation authorities to enhance future safety measures. Efforts to improve aviation security and enhance support for pilots have been implemented, including the introduction of a temporary rule regarding cockpit access, which was later rescinded. Recommendations also encompass the necessity for psychological evaluations for pilots, the implementation of random drug and alcohol testing, and the establishment of more stringent oversight for aeromedical examiners. Furthermore, there was an advocacy for improved privacy regulations to facilitate the sharing of medical information, alongside the creation of a European database for aeromedical data. Another significant recommendation was the establishment of pilot support and reporting systems. It was identified that one contributing factor to Andreas's reluctance to report his deteriorating mental health was the apprehension of job loss and financial instability. Consequently, it is essential to create support networks that enable pilots to seek assistance and make informed choices regarding their mental well-being without the fear of adverse repercussions. In the wake of this tragedy, Captain Patrick Sandenheimer's wife established a foundation in his honor, dedicated to helping children and young people cope with grief and crisis. He devoted his final moments to valiantly attempting to save the aircraft and its passengers.